Welcome to Automotive Alchemy, a podcast that dwells in the cavernous depths of data, unearthing precious gems of wisdom to illuminate your path to digital marketing success. As alchemists, we understand that each nugget of information is a vital ingredient in our elixir of knowledge. So ready yourselves as we embark on an enlightening journey through the arcane world of data-driven automotive marketing.
Welcome back to Automotive Alchemy, the podcast where we transform automotive challenges into opportunities. I'm your host, Sean Rains. Today, we're jumping into the GA4 maze. It's been going on for months, people. We all know it. There's a lot of pain points. Many car dealers out there have been struggling with GA4, but we're here to help you. We're here to help navigate through this. So stay tuned on this episode. We're going to break down some things in GA4 just to make it a little bit more understandable for all of us car guys and gals. It is very important, and it's important for you to learn how to use it. And some of you probably were a little behind the curve even on universal analytics. So this will be a good time for us to jump in on some things relative to rollout, how that's impacting you, basic understanding. Setup has been a real issue for a lot of dealers. The transparency of getting good reporting, though, is essential. And, just having the ability to kind of look ahead as you wrestle through all this. Of course, I'm joined by the premier dealer alchemist himself, Shean Kirin. How's the weather out there in Colorado, Kirin?
It's been snowing a lot lately, so it seems that we've been the center for snowfall. But it's nice to see that. Anytime you have snow in December in Colorado, it's a nice place to be.
Yes,
it makes you want to ski.
That's right. Yep. I haven't been snow skiing in quite some time. I was in Colorado, Broomfield, Colorado last year, mid-December, and there wasn't snow on the ground, but it was very cold. I was there for a concert. So
now you have to let me know when you come out here, because I'll take you skiing, no problem. We don't have to do anything difficult. It's more about the experience, the blue skies, white snow, maybe a couple of cocktails on the mountainside, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that all sounds fantastic. Fantastic for sure.
Well,
listen, I can't wait to I can't wait to kind of crack open your knowledge here on this one. You and I both know we've had conversations outside of the podcast about GA4 being such a hot topic. And I know for some people more GA4, but the reality is, Google's been trying to prep various industries, but certainly automotive for a long time, like the year leading up to the switchover. And so I just kind of wanted to get into a little bit of how that happened, but now that it's out, what are some of the things that dealers are struggling through? And I figured that you could probably help break down some of those things. There are differences, there are changes. And so maybe let's start there, kind of at the beginning. What's changed? What does a car guy need to know too? Because they don't always need to be in the weeds.
So I think one of the biggest differences is that when they rolled out GA4, Google was very specific about how important the changes were. However, they changed all the time between rollout. And so right about that time, the Automotive Standards Council and good old Brian Pash decided to type of standardize a lot of that. And the challenge in trying to standardize something for an entire industry is that you really have to, you have to overkill, right? And so if I look at what occurred, essentially you've got a scenario now where every dealer is reliant upon their website vendor as a general rule of thumb to build out GA4 for them. And then they're reliant upon the conversions from the Automotive Standards Council. Now, really, what is the Automotive Standards Council? It is a group of people that got together and said, okay, let's standardize that. So we participated in all of that. We were, part of the founding members. However, when we started to listen to what was happening, rather than voice our firm disagreement, we just let it go on. We listened and we decided that we would do things differently ourselves. And so let's think about, looking at a GA4 account as a dealer versus what a universal analytics account would look like. Because as a dealer, right, we had just learned how to use Google Analytics, which is UA4 or universal universal analytics is the Google Analytics view that we got used to looking at. And so we're just getting used to that. We're getting digitally savvy. Now you've got COVID. All of a sudden it got a lot easier. And what's happening now? It's not getting easier anymore. And so I know a lot of dealers who haven't cracked open that puppy in quite some time, and now they're looking and it's a lot different. And then you go to look at all the conversions, and when you log in, it usually has all conversions aligned. Well, if you've got 17 different conversions, how much of that do you think matters to the average dealer, Sean? I'm going to say most of it doesn't, right? And so I don't want to point a finger at ASC, because in reality, they're trying to be all things to all people. And really, you've got what the dealer needs and you've got what the advertiser needs. And so my opinion today is, let's just break down both. Let's talk about what we think is most important, why it's most important. And then from there, what should an advertiser do from best practice in order to make sure that we're using all this correctly? Because I think that kind of, it's like sifting through the BS, right? So I'm kind of a geek, right? I liked the Matrix when I was a kid, so anybody remember the Matrix when he's looking at the screen with all of the computer language on it, and the guy's talking about the blonde walking by, and everybody's like, it's computer language. We don't see the blonde walking by. Well, that's what it's like when you look at GA4. We look at it, we see this mess with all of this junk we've never looked at before. And somebody that knows what they're doing or looks at it a lot, looks at it and says, oh, I see the hot whatever, blonde, brunette, whatever is your fancy, walking across, it's catching my eyeball, right? So let's make it easier to find the things that matter to you.
Yeah. So
significant changes, right? No, I'll let you.
Yeah,
go.
And one of the things I wanted to mention, you jogged a thought that I think is important. Well, I know is important. Google Analytics in the UA version and now in the GA4 version, it's a tool that has significant value on both sides of the coin. And in this case, it's for the dealer. If you're the dealer listening and or watching the podcast, it's very important for you. We'll get into some of that. But for businesses like yours, Kirin, it's also really important for you because you're a company that's not afraid of accountability and transparency. You want it. You desire it. That tool helps with that because then you truly get to show the results of your effort. And then your dealer clients get to see, well, here's the truth. So it really is, for a dealer, it's one way for them to be able to I want to be able to inspect and understand what's going on in my business. And at the same time, a vendor who's really worth anything, or a provider of services who's really worth anything, they're also going to want that to be not only implemented, but correctly, so that it tells the truth when their services deserve praise and deserve, you should be retained because you can prove all of this. And I think that's an important thing for both the dealers and service providers. But in the case of the dealers, yeah, it's a great tool for you. But if you have a service provider who's like, nah, they don't really care, they're kind of flippant, or they don't even want you involved with it, that's kind of a red flag. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, so not only is it a red flag, but let's talk about why. So I think GA4 serves two real purposes. The first purpose is from the advertiser side. It allows us to understand any of the traffic that hits that website, what's really happening. What are the users doing? Are they engaged or are they not engaged? And what is the outcome of that visit? Now, from the advertiser perspective, there's a second part that I would say is not really utilized enough. And that is when you properly build an AdWords account, or a paid search account, you allow the AdWords account to have better conversions utilizing conversion data from GA4, which means that if I build out GA4 correctly, then my advertising account is going to perform better, which from the vendor side, I think matters a lot, right? So our claim to fame, right? So we all sell the latest and greatest widget, right? So, and I'm no different, except I just am not as good of a salesperson as a lot of these other people. I just am excited about this stuff, right? But so that being said, right? So the latest and greatest widget. The challenge is that if my widget and the latest and greatest thing is simple data connections that anyone can get anywhere that just plug in, well, you're going to see in Google Analytics that it doesn't work. You cannot hide non-performance in GA4. That's the difference. And so of all the things that matter, now under the hood, there's a lot of things that are different. But let's talk about the things that matter from the advertising side. You can identify poor performance immediately. And so I think from the advertiser side, there's a series of best practices. Best practice number one is make sure the conversions are set up and make sure that they work, right? And then from there, let's make sure we're utilizing those in Google Analytics. So if I think about these changes and how it identifies with the agency or the ad tech company or whomever it is, the vendor utilizing GA4 should be looking at it on a regular basis to improve performance because that's what its purpose is. And then on the dealer side, the sole purpose of GA4 is to be a single source of truth for what's happening on the website so that we can hold vendors accountable. And so 22 years as a dealer, 8 years now with this company that I guess I can't believe it. It's been that long now, right? I'm about to have my 30th anniversary in the car business. Figure that one out, right?
Yeah.
On the dealer side, holding vendors accountable has always been difficult. And so the biggest change in GA4 is it is now easier to hold the vendors accountable because you can't hide things as easily. So I'd say what's different? The measurement tools that were created sort out bad actors in an easier fashion so that you can look at them, inspect them, and kick them out. Because ultimately, the car business is not getting any easier right now. I just saw an article today, I think profit down 20%, 26%, something like that. I was just looking at the headline right as we logged into this. So of course I don't have any of it. It's all out of context. But what I did see was it's all down a lot, right? So advertising dollars matter now again. All of a sudden, I got to think about every penny. And if I've got a non-performer, I got to kick them out because I don't have time to play friends. It's not show friends, it's show business, right? Time to show business.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you also said something I just want to reemphasize for the listeners. And I'm still a little bit cynical, when the biggest search engine in the world is also the biggest analytics provider. So
you and me both. There's something wrong with that picture.
But that's the world we have, unless you have so much money to spend on analytics tools outside of a free one. But the free one that you get from the same search engine that everyone uses, I have to say that I think it's also important, and it's a good thing that they are building these technology platforms with the intention of them being able to have synergistic value in relationship to each other, right? And so it's, and you said this, and I'm just butchering it and not saying it quite as eloquently, but the fact that GA4 more so now than ever integrates with and has a synergistic relationship, right, with kind of what's going on with all of these things. And you referenced Google Ads and the complexity that resides within the ads platform. Those are really important things for dealers to be in consideration of, because there isn't going to be some other search engine and adjacent analytics platform that's going to come along in our lifetimes that will be better. And so knowing some of those things that might come across as a minor detail or it's minutia, it's important minutia. So I'm glad to hear you reference things like that, because in conversations like this where we want to make these challenges present themselves as opportunities to dealers, that's kind of how you have to do it. You have to get into the precious metals to figure out, there are some things that not a lot of other people are talking about that need to be talked about, so that you're aware of it. Would you say that there's like the more common issues? Since the rollout, it seems like it's just a lather, rinse, repeat of like, man, there's still some common issues that dealers are having trouble with. I'd love to hear you speak to that a little bit. Do you think some of that is who they've chosen to do the setups. You referenced a little bit. A lot of times, website providers are doing that. Are we still having people that are putting duplicate instances up, or is that happening? Is there some of that could be spoken to that might be helpful for the dealers if they're having some of these common problems?
So, one of the big changes in GA4 is that you don't get different views the way you had in old analytics. So whereas before you had one analytics account and then you assign different views to different vendors to build the way that they want it, now you've just got GA4. And the challenge in having just GA4 is that conversions are generally broken. So when I look at an analytics account for most providers, I find that there's all these analytics goals and most of them don't matter, right? So we've all heard that phrase, paralysis by analysis. And car dealers, we're guilty, right? We sure do use that phrase when we sell a car, right? But have we ever looked in the mirror and say, what am I doing when I'm looking at my own reporting, right? So if I look at the way that the setups come, and again, right, it's so easy to throw stones at the guys from the ASC, which is just a group of people trying their best. So I sure, right? Everyone's paying money towards those guys. Whether you like it or not, that's your own bone to pick. But I think the reality of it is, if you try to standardize something, you can't be all things to all people. It just doesn't work. What you have to do is you have to choose your path and get specialized in what you apply. So if I look at common issues, we've got 17 different conversions where maybe 7 or 8 of them matter. And all of the rest of these things, so much time on site, clicked on this, clicked on that. There's all of these things that just don't matter. Well, when you build an analytics account properly, you assign value, right? You assign conversion value. And so let me ask you a question. Is as a search results page view or a vehicle page view more important? A VDP more important? Vehicle details page more important?
Which one converted?
I'm going to say probably the VDP is a little bit more important, but along those lines, you're right. It does depend on where they convert. So when I look at assigning value, you've got to have a system that says, is an SRP view and a VDP view worth the same amount of money? What about a click to call or a chat or a text? Is that worth more than an SRP view or a VDP view? Well, I sure hope so, right?
Yeah.
What about a form fill? I mean, now we're getting into the rule of dumb questions, right? Of course, that's worth more. Well, most GA4 accounts that I find aren't set up so that the actual conversions that matter to the dealership are assigned of greater value. And so if anyone has that AdWords account connected, all of a sudden it's not going to work. That's a big problem. So I would say the largest issues that we find are the dealer was used to looking at a small amount of conversions in the old setup. You had 7, 8, 9, 10 conversions in most UA accounts, but now they've jumped into GA4 and they've got 17, and the dealer's saying, what do you mean I have 32,000 conversions? I don't have 32,000 leads. And I'm sure it's a conversation. Every dealer's thinking the same thing. I don't have 32,000 leads. Every vendor's saying the same thing. Well, of course you didn't have 32,000 leads. So what is the better way? The better way is to simplify something so that it's usable by all of us. So I think, how do you fix this issue? Number one, understand what's important. I would say as a dealer, there's a dealer conversion, and it's not that difficult. There's a call, there's a chat, there's a text, there's a form fill, which is all of my native forms and my trade tool forms and my finance application forms, right? Service forms. But for the purpose of this, really, most of us are interested in sales conversion, right? Over service conversion. So if I think about it on that vein, I get to this part where I've got to make sure that those work first. Well, guess what? They break. It just happens. As much as I wish it was perfect, they break. And so as an advertiser, I would say our company is, deeply in bed with GA4 because it is the center point of all management. And even though we have our own reporting dashboard, website, whatever you want to call it, all we do is API the data over there and make it easier to look at. In reality, every dealer should know how to look at GA4 because you can't hide things there. Well, if it was my own dashboard and I wanted to hide a couple dollars here and a couple dollars there, well, I could do that because I wrote it, right? In GA4, you can't do that. So fixing that first is identifying the dealership conversions and understanding that sales conversions are sales conversions. And then making sure that they work. And you have to check them every single month because they break, period. And guess what? Even though you can set up an alerting system when things don't work, the alerting system doesn't work very well and it over errors you because GA4 is not perfect. And so along those lines, you just have to check it 2, 3, 4 times a month and look to see if it's working, and then you're going to find that you're fixing it. On that second piece, I would argue that there are only a couple of conversions that really matter from an advertising perspective. Number one is going to be an SRP view, and number two is going to be a VDP view. And the reason I would argue that is that if I'm paying attention to engagement time combined with SRP views and VDP views, that tells me the entire story of what I need. Let me give you a couple of examples. I'm a random agency. I put my standard 50, 60% of your ad budget towards your dealer name and your regional terms in your area. That person clicks on there, they land on your home page. It takes them 3 minutes to find a car. Congratulations, your AdWords account is broken. If you see that you're looking at your AdWords account and your engagement time is 2 minutes, 3 minutes, your ad account is set up wrong. It is like the largest red flag, right? It is a bigger red flag than a 20-second time on site engagement, believe it or not. Well, why is that so different? It's because we were never taught to think like that. What were we taught as dealers? Any engagement is good engagement, right? I want all the engagement.
The longer they're there, the better.
That's exactly. Oh, you were 3 minutes time on site. Amazing. They got lost on my website. Well, the problem with getting lost on your website, right, is they actually did get lost. They couldn't find what they wanted. Well, think about it. When you, right, if you're looking on your cell phone at something, how much time do you really spend looking over that website for what you want to find? Are you on there for 2 minutes, 3 minutes? Or is it 30 seconds to maybe 1 minute? And at the end of that, you've probably lost interest and you've probably gone to shop a different brand. That sounds a little bit more real, right?
Yes.
So I'm going to give you this exercise, right? My favorite exercise on the planet, right? I want to show you what 15 seconds feels like because it looks different on Google Analytics, right? So I'm going to do this. I shouldn't be grabbing a cell phone in the middle of this because now I just made everybody grab their cell phone because people are ridiculous like that. Got a little stopwatch. Ready?
Yep.
Okay, we're going to not say anything. 3, 2, 1. Well, that was 15 seconds.
I was waiting for the Jeopardy theme.
It was faster for you and I because we're actually having the conversation. So let's say that I watched this for the first time and I'm like, what the hell just happened? That 15 seconds was an eternity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So GA4 is wonderful because it allows you to think of it's already thought about these things. Google GA4 understands how people engage today, and that is really what matters. So I would say the first thing that dealers are struggling with is understanding those conversions, also understanding where to look. But I can fix that in a couple of seconds, right? Because you look at a screen that looks completely different, and you're like, what the hell is this? I'm sure a ton of us have had that problem. But once you get the screens figured out, because the data is just in a different place, once you know where to look, that part goes away. After that, it's how is this information, how does it help me make a better decision? So, number one rule of thumb, in my opinion, and I'll tell you our company's opinion is this: dealership conversions are leads. And by the way, is a directions visit a lead, Sean? No, it's not.
To the dealership?
I'm just gonna answer that for everybody.
Yeah.
No, the directions click, the directions visit on your, yes, they clicked on directions. That is not a lead.
Yeah. When you're desperate to justify yourself, then it is.
Yeah, right. I saw this reporting platform and it was like 3,996 leads. And I thought, this is the best vendor I have ever seen on the face of the planet. And then it was clicked on the contact us page, clicked on the directions. And I'm just like, really?
You've probably been in this game.
There was 100 total leads and phone calls. And I was thinking to myself, 100 leads and phone calls. I wonder if this dealer is profitable right now. Probably not. I mean, if they were, they may not have been searching. So anyways,
you've been in this game long enough. Good. And I agree. And you, of course, you're like a overly generous Santa Claus, and you drop extra gifts, and a couple of them I have to address because I think there's good stuff in there. So, and so one of those things that you were mentioning kind of actually sets up kind of the next thing I want to ask you a little bit and see if it's accurate. I've never approached the industry as like I'm an analytics expert. I've always known my way, especially around universal analytics, with a great deal of comfort, like setting up somebody's analytics back in the day. I haven't set up anybody's GA4. And I have a guy on my team that knows it pretty well. But that said, I do understand enough that GA4 would be an environment that if I wanted to establish some goal tracking, kind of like the old school way of goal tracking around my SRP hits and engagement, my VDP engagement, my trade tool, my engagement with social media channels, all that kind of stuff, that I can set those things up. Would that be accurate that I could do that?
Technically, it's accurate. However, the second you go to try to set those things up yourself, it is very different. So my advice is someone needs to set it up for you. If you are the analytics person, right? I mean, no problem. I can print you a manual that we had our analytics team make up on how to do that yourself. And I was looking at how to simplify it in order to have this, and I realized that that's not a thing. Right? There are people that live in code and there are people that talk for a living. And if you talk for a living, chances are you don't live in code, and it looks a lot like code, right? Like we all worked in HomeNet. Like most of us in the car business have been to HomeNet and built a pricing tool and inventory where you like put the puzzle pieces next to each other. That's literally what it's like when you're kind of building that out, right? So if you know what if this, then that statements are, fantastic. You're going to have a good time. And if you don't look at those things on a regular basis, get someone to build it out for you. And I'll tell you.
So I definitely, I was going to say, I definitely agree with advocating for dealers to get in touch with an expert on anything, whether hopefully you are set up and maybe just struggling and you need some help. But the reason why I asked specifically about setting things up to track the results of, or SRP relative metrics, VDP relative metrics is, and I may have referenced this book on this podcast before, but several years ago when the book You Should Test That by Chris Goward came out, it just changed my realm of thinking around conversion rate optimization and a whole bunch of things. And I included this in some presentations that I built. These are now several years back, but I think it applies to how dealers should be thinking about GA4, and that is, and you were asking some of these questions, this is why it sparked it, because you were asking specifically, what's more valuable, SRP or VDP? My answer would be, well, what one's converting better? The only reason why I ask that is because I've been in the game for so long. I know that there are very few website providers that index more heavily on their SRP, and they want to drive more conversion there before they even get them to the detail page. And if that's your methodology, then more to power to you. There is a website provider out there that does really well with that strategy, actually. But what I would advocate to dealers would be doing a test, and the only way you'd be able to do this is by setting it up properly in analytics, and that would be take the top 5 or the top 10 what you think are the most valuable conversion events that could happen on your beloved dealership website. And so what's that going to be? Somebody calls you, somebody fills out a form. Which page did they fill it out on? Do you have forms in different places? Did they chat with you? Did they fill out a form on your trade tool? There's a lot of different things. Was it a service appointment? Did somebody come through your parts department page? A lot of different things. Social media engagement, that used to be such a rage many years ago. Like, we need to drive more likes to our Facebook page from our dealership website. Are you kidding me? But we used to think those things, and you've said this a lot. Oftentimes it's the vendors or the partners that are teaching dealers how to think, and it's wrong. And so I would tell dealers, you should test that concept. Would be you need to test those notions, those preconceived notions of what the most valuable conversion events are on your website. Because one, you're going to be wrong probably by at least 50%, likely. You'll be right on the things that you probably should be right on, but then you'll be surprised. And then you have to go about, and this is where, hire somebody, get an expert to set this up in a way in perpetuity that your site is telling you the truth about those most important conversion areas of your site, because that's the information that you're going to utilize. You're not going to do it yourself at the dealer level, but you are going to be able to look at that, especially if somebody isn't already coaching you in that direction. You're going to be able to look at that and say, oh, we need to make this adjustment, or we need to make this change, or we need to, that needs to not even be on that part of our website, right? Because it's cannibalizing a much higher valuable conversion event. And I would tell dealers, you need to think about this all the way down the path. Somebody converted at the VDP page. Okay, if they converted off of your VDP page, what's the likelihood that they bought a car from you, right? So now what's the value of that conversion event versus somebody liked you? Like, they clicked and went to your Facebook page and liked you. What's the value of that? 5 cents and 2 cents in comparison to, this person went down your trade-in tool. They filled that out. They traded in your vehicle. So not only did you sell them, doesn't matter if it's new or used, but you took their trade and either wholesaled it, hopefully made a couple bucks, or it was prime inventory that you kept on your lot and you made money in that manner as well. Operationally, inside the dealership, and you know this better than me because I sold cars just for the experience for a couple of years while I was working, at Reynolds at their website division years and years ago. But operationally around every single role in the dealership, that having this set up today, making GA4 not just a priority, but getting beyond the struggle and setting it up for just win, 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 it affects almost every part of the dealership. For the good or for the bad. So having a working knowledge is great, but having people that know how to calibrate it to be successful for you, it's not even something that is up for debate. There's no conversation to be had other than where do we go find the right people and make that happen.
And I think there's a few thoughts there. The first is, as a dealer, it used to be with Universal Analytics. Well, that's my internet person's job. That's my marketing person's job. The standard marketer never spent time learning how to build out the back end of a GA4 account. And just because they don't know how to build that out doesn't make them a bad marketer. As a matter of fact, some of the best marketing minds that I know have no idea how to build out a GA4 account. One of these things is like writing code. One of these things is the creative backbone of your dealership. These are two entirely different functions, right? And so, going back to your example, I think there's a few things there. One being, it's easy to get confused by saying that like has value, this page has value. The specials page, oh my God, don't get me started. Your specials page doesn't convert. If you look at GA4 and you build out a conversion for your specials page, no matter how much money you dump on that page, you do not get leads or engagement time enough to make that matter. So let me just say that one more time because I think it's super important. Your specials
Yes.
page does not convert, right? We used to, a long time ago, spend all this money driving to the specials page because we were excited about it. I've got this big fancy widget. It tells you what the payment's going to be and the price is going to be and the discount. And it's so awesome. Except that the data shows that it doesn't work. Now, what do we want to trust? Do we want to trust me as a magic salesperson that can, sell ice to an Eskimo? Or do we want to trust the data that says you spent $7,000 driving business to the specials page and you got 0 leads and you had 3 seconds time on site? Or engagement time,
Yeah.
sorry, 3 seconds engagement time. Right? So I would say that $7,000 was just wasted. So why do we want to do this correctly is because it lets me figure that out. So in the interest of keeping it simple, a website provider might do some of that for you. Your advertising provider might do some of that for you. They might charge you for it. Frankly, they should because you have to manage it, right? We don't do it for free, right? If I need to manage somebody's GA4 account for them, I charge them a small fee because inevitably every other month I'm going to fix something. Or I'm going to find out that they made a big change on their website and they never told anybody. And by the way, some of those trade forms that they want to use, they don't even fire events for Google Analytics to read and build conversions off of, right? You could have a trade tool on your website. You could have an iframed in thing on your website, and that thing doesn't send events to GA4, which means nobody can build conversions on it. So you ought to have a company that gets that, and the standard set of conversions is form fill, call, which is click to call, right? Chat, text, trade tool, finance tool. That's your standard 7 right there. My next one's new VDP views, use VDP views, new SRP views, used SRP views. I would say that the rest are unimportant, and they are the exact definition of paralysis by analysis. Let's not overcomplicate something. Let's get to the things that matter most and allow us to make decisions. And that's what setting that up correctly does. So if we're struggling with how to set up GA4 or understand it, rule number 1 is that right there. Build out your 7 proper conversions, build out SRP views for new, SRP views for used, VDP views for new, VDP views for used. And once you have that set up, then you have everything you need to hold people accountable because the other tools were natively built into GA4, right? So I would say if we want to look at setup, let's simplify it. Let's do that. And there are very few instances where you need more than that.
I love that you emphasize the importance of working with people that see the value in providing a GA4 type of service, whether they're doing setup or they're just doing ongoing management. It's too critical of a piece. It's almost unfortunate. I mean, it's a double-edged sword. Google Analytics, GA4 is free, and yet it contains extreme value for a business owner, right? It's like,
how many dealer groups have a 20 group or a consultant that goes in and teaches them how to read and understand and analyze a financial statement? Right? That financial statement, it's the health of your business, right? So as a dealer, I know how to read a financial statement, and I got to tell you, learning to read that was not easy. I'll never forget, I worked for this guy named Daryl Shuck. God bless the man. He was incredible, right? So unfortunately, he's not around anymore. But what he did is he said, Sean, I'm going to teach you how to understand the expenses in a dealership. And he gives me the stack of papers that's like this high and says, I want to introduce you to the general ledger. And he goes, your job is to understand every line item on this. And he goes, I'll just give you a tip. I normally read it on the toilet, is what he told me. And so I sit there and I start reading this thing. And of course, you read it in the beginning and it's like reading Chinese, right? And so as I'm going and I'm reading this thing, I'm starting to understand it. And you get about 6 months into reading the general ledger for the first time when you've never even looked at anything in an accounting world before. And all of a sudden, you start to identify sections, you start to identify things, you start to realize that there's a method to the madness, right? So most good GMs, not all, like, because you can be a good GM and not fully understand that. Like, I know a couple of guys that can't read a statement to save their lives, but they are spectacular leaders and people. But most of us, we look at a statement, right? So if reading a statement is that much work and it's the health of your business, then your GA4 account is your advertising general ledger. It's your advertising statement. And learning how to read that is equally important, because what it does is it teaches us where the holes are so that we can identify and correct problems. That's why we want to use it. And it doesn't have to be the general manager using GA4. It can be a marketing director. It can be an internet director. It could be a sales manager or a GSM. It doesn't matter who, but someone in the dealership needs to look at it on a regular basis. And then if you are looking at a third-party reporting platform, right? Like we use one. The reason we built a third-party reporting platform is I can API all data into one page, and that one page can be viewed on a cell phone or on a website or wherever somebody wants to look at it, and they can see all of their data in one place so they can look for a hole. What is a hole? Something that changed. Hold on, this cost per click should be $2. How come it's $4? Let's go investigate. Now I can dive into AdWords. Now I can dive into analytics, and I can start investigating problems, right? The purpose of this is to tell me where to look to find the cause of a problem so that I can fix it, right? So that's what GA4 is all about anyway. Sorry to go on a long tangent there, but I think that's the best comparison, that at least it's the one that stood out to me. I learned to read a financial statement because I want to understand the health of my business. I learned to read GA4 because I want to understand the health of my advertising. Regardless, you got to understand the health.
It's a great analogy. Understanding how to read that P&L statement both saves and makes dealerships, really any business, it both saves money and it also makes money if you know what you're looking at. And Google Analytics, albeit a free tool, it literally, if you know what you're doing, setting it up, using it as a management and measurement tool, it will save your dealership money and it will make your dealership money because of what it informs you of. I think that's huge. So that's a good dovetail into just your thoughts on, and I love that this is a common theme with you and your company, but transparent reporting, right? It's a necessity. Love to know some of your thoughts on, why that's so important. It's one thing to make these revelations known that, hey, this is a great tool. It's free. It can help you save money. It can help you make money. But the transparency piece is really critical. And we talked just a little bit about how it's important on both sides of the coin. The dealers, of course, are going to want to see that, but real legitimate partners or vendors, I'm not a big fan of the partner term, but service provider I love a lot. So the service provider, legitimate ones, they want that transparency. They should want that transparency, just as the dealer's going to want that transparent visibility.
It's funny you say that. I don't like that partner term very much. Someone once told me, you realize if you're writing them a check, they're a vendor, not a partner, right?
Yeah.
So, they're one of two things if you write them a check. They're a vendor or they're an employee, right? Yeah. That is very different than a partner.
The sidebar for me is just, I've always felt like when people are like, well, we're not your vendor, we're a partner. I know, and I probably have friends that might even watch this and see like, well, come on, we are partners. And they want to I don't want to debate with people in the industry, so you can all just bugger off. Like, I don't care. But I do want to say that I think it's just more of a salesy term to try to tell people like, well, we're your partner. Because really, if you are, then show me where, when all of your clients had a downturn in business during COVID, that you literally reduced all their invoices at the same time by the same percentage that their business went down, and you took the ride with them so that you wouldn't lose their business. Like, that's somebody who might say, well, I'm going to feel the same pain as you, but that's not what most people do. So I'm a bigger fan of like, hey, yeah, we're one of your vendors. We're probably one of the ones that tell you the truth. We're an honest vendor, but I also love service provider because you can have a tremendous amount of
provider. I
integrity.
also think partner denotes a two-way relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have some dealers that I would consider a partner. And the reason I consider them a partner is that it's a two-way relationship. It's not they buy advertising technology from us, we fulfill their accounts for them, we report on those accounts. It
Mm-hmm.
is we collaborate on ideas together on how do we improve? What can we do differently in the future to make things better? It's I have an
Yeah.
idea, could you? It is, hey, I'd like to test this. Can we test this in your store? And really, a true partnership is a two-way approach where both people are collaborating on how to make things better instead of, let me talk to you about what my latest idea is for a new special pitch program, blah blah blah, right? That's not
Yeah.
quite the same thing. But anyways, easy tangent to go off on. So we talk about transparency in GA4. I think we bypassed where do you look. So as a
Hmm.
dealer, I think there's important to know where do you look in GA4 to find the most relevant information, because the first time you click on it, you appear on a screen that looks funny. So on the left-hand side of GA4, you want to click on reports and you want to look at user acquisition because that's going to look familiar, right? That's where we find the reporting that tells us about the health of what's happening in the dealership. It's reports on the left-hand side in user acquisition, and that one is really important. The next one is a tab underneath that called Explore on the left-hand side. If your AdWords account is connected to analytics, it shows underneath Explore. And so any good vendor should connect their AdWords account to the analytics account. And if they refuse to connect that account, it's because they're hiding something. Every single time, no matter what they tell you, there is no transparency that you can't verify. What's the attorney phrase? Trust but verify, right? You know why attorneys say that, right? Because they don't want to get screwed. And so the obligation is the responsibility is to put that in there, right? To put the contract in place and then to connect the AdWords account to the analytics account so that we can verify that all of those funds were spent correctly. So why does it matter? Let's pick on display. We all know that I'm not the biggest proponent of display. And it's not that I don't like it as a medium. Far from it. There are some items that function really well in display. The challenge is that the automotive industry display world is a pile of junk. If you see 3 seconds engagement time, that was money that you left on the table, or that was money that you wasted, right? So 3-second engagement time is not a real human. It's just not. You can try to sell me on why that's real. I'm going to politely disagree with you because I think that's not true, right? So that explore section and connected with AdWords, that's where you find it. And then the last one is an advertising section, right? So the problem is you got these 4 tabs above that, which are super confusing. Google wants to sell you things, and that's why it's there. So let's just go to the other ones. Reports, explore, and advertising. Advertising is where you find something called top conversions. Top conversions is where you see how many people from your advertising were early touch points, middle touch points, and late touch points before conversion. And that is incredibly, incredibly important. Good consumers, real humans, don't just click on one thing. They tend to click on multiple items that drive them to your website before they finally convert and buy a vehicle. So it will look like they showed up off of a Facebook ad, a meta ad, whatever. They went over there after work. They jumped back on their cell phone. They went to go put that URL in. It popped up. They click on it. So that's a direct visit because it would just appeared in their URL. They spend a little bit of time. They disconnect. They go eat dinner. They say, oh, yeah, that was at, and I'm just going to use my old store because, I love those guys, Tynan's. So they oh, yeah, it was Tynan's. So then they go to Tynan's.com and then they go try to find the vehicle that way. Then they go back and they see the search ad for the vehicle they're looking. They click on that search ad because they're already familiar with your dealership, right? Consumers come back 3, 4, 5, 7, 20 times before they convert. Think about yourself, right? I recently did a little bit of purchasing online. Probably not that much different than a lot of other people out there. The ones that I was able to pick in the first click were the ones my wife sent me to buy for her because I suck at buying presents. It just is what it is, right? Everything that my wife didn't send me a link for, I probably had to go through 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times before I made the purchase. And I think that's how most of us actually work, right?
Yep.
So those are the areas that you look. And what those do is those are the places where GA4 will start to look familiar. After that, transparency. When you look at those reports, there's a portion that's so incredibly important, and it is engagement time. And I cannot stress this enough. Engagement time on something that clicks into your website should never be less than 15 seconds. And in reality, should really not be much more than a minute, maybe a minute 20. But I would even say that is starting to go a little bit too far because it's average engagement time, right? So I want to look at all my ad sources in there. And in my ad sources, it's going to show my direct visits. Your direct and organic are going to be the largest because your direct and organic went to one URL, usually the homepage, and then they had to find what they were looking for, be it service, parts, or sales. So organic, 3 minutes organic time, super regular. You're going to see that all the time, right? 2 minutes organic time, no problem. You probably have a website that's easy to navigate, and that's a good thing, not a bad thing. 1 minute time on site, 30 seconds time on site from organic traffic, something is wrong. You got a problem, right? Now, if I'm paying for it, my email blast, my third-party email blast, which, I mean, why are you running that anyways? But that's a whole nother conversation. My display campaigns, my social campaigns, my search campaigns, my Performance Max or VLA campaigns, every one of those, you now want to look at time on, you want to look at engagement time. We used to compare bounce rate and time on site. We used to look for a low bounce rate, but then it changed because we realized that we want them to land on the first page. Healthy bounce rate for a well-written social ad is like 60%, by the way. Why is that healthy? Because they actually clicked on the right vehicle because you showed them the right vehicle using their data. That was the vehicle they wanted to buy. So they clicked on it and spent some time look at it and probably clicked on it 5 or 6 times because that's what they do, right? Time on site, 15 seconds. It used to be anywhere from 30 seconds on the low end to a minute and a half on the high end. Now we look at engagement time. Engagement time is once they got to your website, how much time were they scrolling the picture, moving the mouse, or doing something that showed that they were engaged. It isn't just I threw it up on the website and then I never touched it again. That's why the old metric didn't work. In the old days, what you could do is you could build a bot that you ran through an email blast. It would open the website, it would stay on there for 22 hours, and then it would log off. And then that would skew the engagement time on it. So you look at the average time on site, you'd see 20 seconds on that campaign, and you say, my email blast is kicking ass. And then you go sort those clicks, and you'd find that 98% of those clicks were 1 second or less. But randomly, 2 or 3% were on there for 20 plus hours. I'm going to ask you a question. You think that's a human? Probably not. Engagement time doesn't allow that to happen anymore. That's why engagement time is strong, okay? So with engagement time, I'm looking for anywhere between 15 seconds and really I want to cap out at a minute. When I've got engagement time of more than a minute, I want a very clear reason why. Did I not land them on the right place in the first click, right? Or is there something that's outside of the ordinary? Like, for example, I've got a Ram 1500 customer. And on my Ram 1500 customer, I've got 65 in stock. Because I've got 65 in stock, there are 2 minutes time on site on the Ram ads looking at engagement because they truly are shopping for a vehicle and they're trying to find which one of the black ones had the right equipment package. Like, that's a real consumer, and that's what they'll do. They'll sort it by color, right? They'll get into equipment.
Yeah.
That's how they'll look at it. So I think as a dealer, our hot buttons are find the 3 places where you look, which is reports, explore, and advertising. Go look at engagement time. And is my engagement time off? If it's less than 15 seconds, start asking questions. Why in the world am I paying for this? What would happen if I allocated this money to other areas, right? And then on the flip side, if I'm looking at a paid advertisement with 2 minutes engagement time, where did I land that customer that made them look like that? Because most customers you don't average 2 minutes time on site for a well-written ad. It's 30 to 45 seconds is really the sweet spot for most consumers because people have a short attention span. So I know that's a really long-winded setup, but transparency, that is why that transparency matters. That's the definition of how you see it, how you look at it, how you find it, and how you use it in order to make an educated decision, or maybe ask an educated question. The educated question is, how come on my display campaign or how come on my social campaign they were engaged for 8 seconds? And if the vendor stutters, you should probably spend that money elsewhere, right? That probably that's a problem.
Yeah, most definitely. So much to unpack. I mean, we could go for a lot longer, but I think this is a good place to put the cap back on this bottle of awesome. And it won't surprise me, audience, if we end up talking about GA4 again in the future. I don't know if you have any parting last comments that you wanted to make before I
do
kind of wrap it up. But man, there's a lot of really good stuff in here.
The first time you pop in a GA4, you may notice something. You may notice that you click on something and it looks like it's wrong. Sometimes when you click on an item in GA4, it doesn't properly load and the problem still isn't fixed. So we notice sometimes that when I go to click on something, I click on it and the data doesn't load. There is massive amounts of data that feeds into GA4. And one of the challenges that occurs on the dealer side is you'll click through 2, 3, 4, 5 different clicks. Well, all of a sudden you've just got Google thinking, and now that you've got Google thinking, it needs to figure stuff out. So when that occurs, if you click on something and your data doesn't change, you may need to log out and log back in. It does happen, right? It's frustrating to marketers. It's frustrating to us. One of the reasons we built our back-end reporting tool was because we were so frustrated with Google Analytics and this happening, and it was tripling the amount of time that it took for my people to inspect an account. And so I had to build a separate way for them to do the inspection because I could no longer rely on what Google was doing. So I think that's an important caveat to throw out there. The other thing I would say, right, is, and selfish self-plug here, but we are happy to look at the account with you. If you've got a question about the account, the setup of it, whatever, you feel free to reach out. Like, that's exactly what we're here for. So I'll tell you a quick story. So as you know, Sean, because we met from our mutual friend, Jeff Clark, right? And what an easy guy to love. And so I'm a geek, right? It is what it is, right? So it's easy for me to get obsessed with the data, obsessed with the numbers. And when I'm in that mode, absolutely not the most personable person on the planet, right? Because the more time you spend engulfed in something and buried in it, right? It's like my buddy that's an accountant. He is a phenomenal accountant. Maybe not the most charisma you've ever seen. He's like talking to a door. Nice guy. He's super funny at the bar because he lets loose at the bar. But man, you catch him in the middle of your workday, you would think you just pissed into Cheerios, right? Yeah. Well, the thing about Jeff Clark one of the many things I love about Jeff Clark is he reminded me so much about how much relationships matter. And the thing about relationships and how much they matter is that you build a relationship by answering questions when there's nothing else going on, right? Like when there is no business that's going to occur. And I would say that any good vendor should absolutely be willing to sit there and look at the account with you. I know we are. And what I find is, there's a number of vendors out there that do a great job. And some of them are friends of ours, right? Like we've got some people that we compete with that I truly love competing with them because they're great people. They're wonderful adversaries. And even though I still think I'm better, and of course they think they're better, it's always nice to be able to say, hey, you know what? This is my friend's company and they are doing a great job for you. Or it's my friend's company. Let me just make a phone call for you because, somebody made a mistake, but this is not their normal work. Like, they are better than this, and anyone is human. Anyone can make a mistake, right? But I think just knowing that you can reach out when you, like, if you go to our website and you schedule a time to chat, we'll look at your GA4 account with you. We can screen share it. We can do any of those things, because ultimately, the more knowledgeable you are about how to look at this, the easier it is for us to do our job. And I think that's really the key.
Yeah, I think that's great, and a lot of great observations there. And I completely understand some of those sentiments as well. I mean, I know all of you guys out there, and work with some of you, and I'm like, I'm not picking. I just love all of you guys. So I just went, because I get, dealer friends of mine, when they find out, hey, what are you doing with these guys? What are you working with these guys? I'm like, I love them all. You need to talk to them all. You're the one that's going to make that decision. So I'm not going to give you the opportunity to hang it back on me. And you're like, hey, you said that they're, I love them. They're great. You need to, sometimes it might come down to they're maybe equally capable, but you might jive better with the people. Like you said, when Clark, relationships. Sometimes that's going to be the key factor above everything else, because everything else is, equal. So
you know what happens when you work on the vendor side for a while? You miss working in the dealer side. So I can tell you, for most of us that spend a number of years in a dealership first, it's refreshing to talk to people that sell cars every day, because I got to tell you that I miss that part. It's fun closing car deals. It's fun desking car deals. It's fun in finance. It's fun at the push at the end of the month. I mean, I would love to say I miss the hours, but believe it or not, the vendor hours are worse than the car guy hours, because you just start working at 6 a.m. instead, and you work until 10 or 11 o'clock at night, because you're at a computer instead of sitting at the desk. Like, the hours, unfortunately, are longer. But car people are fun to talk to. Like, that's the other thing that's good about it, is car people are, if you ever think you want to break from the car business, go spend about an hour in another type of industry, and it will remind you why the car business is so great.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, some of my very favorite, this is a big industry. The longer you're in it, I guess the smaller it kind of gets, but I'm with you, man. Like, some of my very favorite people, and some people that have become some of my best friends in the car business, are actually dealers. Just wonderful people, and being able to experience their side, the retail side of the industry, is always refreshing. It charges me up. It really, really charges me. So, well, I got to say to the audience, thanks for joining us for another episode of Automotive Alchemy. Today, we uncovered some really good points on GA4 and how it can revolutionize your dealership's digital strategy, right? It can save you money. It can make you money. A free tool that actually has a tremendous value. Remember, hey, understanding and implementing GA4, it's not just a step forward. It's really a leap into the future for marketing. There's a lot of future proofing you can do when you set it up the right way. It literally becomes like a crystal ball. But how has it gone for you? You may not be happy with it. Are there pros and cons? We'd love to hear from you. And so you need to know also that when Kirin says, hey, we're here to help you, they're here. If you need them and you'd like to go deeper, or even take advantage of a complimentary digital marketing audit along with just talking through some stuff with GA4, go to dealeralchemist.com and get in touch. And if you'd like, to meet some actual dealer alchemists in person, well, NADA is coming up soon, and you will find Dealer Alchemist at booth 6643N, and that's N like North. 6643N, you will find the Dealer Alchemist booth and a whole bunch of people that will be more than happy to talk you through some of that stuff. So, of course, don't miss our next episode, where we're going to continue to take these automotive challenges and turn them into gold. Until next time.